depression is not a chemical imbalance. It has nothing to do with serotonin. It has nothing to do with dopamine. The fact that Prozac increases serotonin and is an antidepressant, it's a happy accident. The two have nothing to do with each other. Literally nothing to do with each other. Depression actually is a degenerative disease.
Hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan, and this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction recovery issues, and topics. And are you ready to rethink everything you know about mental health? Well, this week we're going to be speaking to Dr. Theodore Henderson, who is revolutionizing, did I say that right? Probably not. He's changing the way we do brain science. So with that being said, Dr. Theodore, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, how you're going to change thinking that we do about brains?
Yeah. So let's just frame this for a second. What if every condition that affects the brain, be it neurological like traumatic brain injury or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, or psychiatric like depression, PTSD, ADHD, even autism, what if every single one of those disorders had something in common? And if you treated that common thing, then all the disorders would get better. Now, what's the common thing with all these disorders? The neuron.
Okay.
And so if you've got a sick neuron, if you've got an unhealthy neuron, and we can even take it deeper, if you've got an unhealthy mitochondria, then you're going to have an unhealthy neuron and an unhealthy brain, and it might manifest as any one of these conditions. So what would happen if you made the cell healthier, if you made the mitochondria healthier?
Everything else would become healthier too.
Everything else would become healthier. So it doesn't matter what the condition is if you can unify a treatment that works at the level of the mitochondria and the neuron.
Okay. But if I'm not mistaken, the mitochondria is really small inside of the cell too, right? So it's not like we can just sit there and do surgery on it, and each individual one too, there's like hundreds of millions, if not more, right?
Correct. Exactly. Yeah.
So how do we actually affect the mitochondria inside of our cells, especially in our brain, right?
Yeah. It sounds crazy. You ready?
Yeah. Yeah.
You shine light on it.
But it's inside the head, right?
Exactly. And that was my initial reaction when somebody came to me and said, hey, I want you to do brain scans on these patients who have traumatic brain injury, and then I'm going to shine a light on them. And then after I get done doing this light treatment, you're going to do a brain scan and show how they got better. My initial reaction was, what? So, in fact, so I came back to him and said, okay, the only way this is going to work is if we figure out how to deliver the light so it's strong enough hitting the skin that it can get through the scalp and into the brain. And so we literally did that. We went into the laboratory, we did the research, we figured out how to make this work, and by golly, it works.
Oh, so it's light strong enough to hit our brain, but wouldn't that give us like a sunburn or something?
Well, if it was, a visible light or full spectrum light that you can see, but it's not. So here's where it gets geeky. Sorry, I get pretty excited about this stuff. So certain wavelengths of infrared light are able to, if they can reach the neuron, if they can reach the mitochondria, they activate the mitochondria. They turn them on. They make them more active. And mitochondria do more than just make energy. They also send signals to the rest of the cell. And if you turn on these mitochondria so they're sending signals, they activate things like growth factors in the brain that stimulate neuroplasticity. They also turn on anti-inflammatory proteins in the brain. So it reduces inflammation in the brain.
That's weird. Okay, wait, so if light is doing this, then what does that necessarily say about the mitochondria? That's the kind of thing that I'm kind of curious about. What makes infrared and mitochondria themselves have that link? What is it?
Right, right. Okay, well, it's a great question. Thanks for asking it. But we're going to get really kind of science geeky here. All right,
Okay.
so if any of you had high school biology or beyond, then you learned about the mitochondria and you learned about the electron transport chain. And the electron transport chain moves an electron from enzyme to enzyme and builds ATP. And ATP is the energy of the cell, right? Okay, well, some of those enzymes contain copper.
Oh.
So just like our hemoglobin contains iron, and the iron allows, because it's iron and copper, they're big metal atoms, and they have a large cloud of electrons. So one of those outer electrons can be clipped off or knocked off, and that allows oxygen to bind and then release where it's supposed to. In the case of iron, in the electron transport chain, the copper has a certain wavelength that it's sensitive to. And you hit it with that wavelength of infrared light and off pops an electron.
Ooh, okay. Dude, wait a minute. That actually kind of makes a little bit of sense, right? Because electromagnetism says that both energy and magnetism are intercorrelated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in a sense, yeah, if you match the frequency, it should be able to do something. But how was this even found in the first place? Is my question.
Well, ironically, this stuff started in the Soviet Union. The original studies of infrared light. Yeah, I know. And then NASA picked up, and NASA was using it to speed wound healing for the astronauts. And if you shine infrared light on a wound, it will heal faster. So Harvard then started studying it, and they have a whole institute, a whole building, just to study infrared light. And that, became this tour de force of research on the biological effects of infrared light on the brain and on the rest of the body. So the work, Michael Hamblin, he's the godfather of photobiomodulation. That is how infrared light affects biology. And he just retired from Harvard after many years of great work. So the Harvard research had shown, look, you treat mice who have traumatic brain injuries with infrared light, they get better. You treat mice with strokes with infrared light, they get better. You treat depressed mice with infrared light, they get better. So the groundwork was laid in these animal studies, these mouse studies. And then folks down in Australia have been studying Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's. Out in California, they're looking at Alzheimer's. Down in Texas, they're looking at Alzheimer's and cognition in general. So, it's become, photobiomodulation is probably the fifth branch of medicine. We've not quite gotten to the point where it's recognized, but we're right there. And, we're in my clinic, we are treating patients. And we've been treating them since 2013.
Wow. That is really, really cool. This is super awesome because it's not only reputable, it is something that is also right on that edge of magic and science, right? Because it's one of those things that it's kind of where there's that saying, magic is just technology that's indistinguishable to we don't know how it works, right? So imagine just going up to someone and shining something on them and their wound heals real fast. It's whoa, that's magic, but of course it doesn't do it instantaneous, I'm sure.
Correct.
But the results would be fairly quick. And does it happen because of the same thing with the copper being releasing an electron?
Yeah, so again, it starts at the level of the mitochondria. The mitochondria doesn't, can be in a brain cell, it can be in a lung cell, it could be in a skin cell. And if you activate those mitochondria and they start sending signals to the chromosomes, turning on growth factors, and you turn on a fibroblast-derived growth factor in a cut on your hand, the cut heals faster. if you turn on the mitochondria in the lungs and there's COVID inflammation there, or long COVID, and you reduce the inflammation because that's the mitochondria drive anti-inflammatory protein production, then all of a sudden the inflammation in the lung goes away. And we have patients who came into the clinic, they could not walk up a flight of stairs because they would get exhausted. And now they're back to hiking the 14ers in the mountains here in Colorado.
Whoa, that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Like, when do you think that people are going to start taking this kind of seriously? Because, like I said, it's right there where some people are going to be like, nah, that's not real. That's quack science, you know? Because it just sounds so it's so revolutionary. It really is. It is going to change the medical field, I think.
Yeah. So let me frame this for you a little bit.
Okay.
Do you know what a stem cell is?
Yeah.
Okay. 15 years ago, if I had asked you the question, or I'd said to you, okay, look, I want to put stem cells in your body, you'd say, what? You want to put daffodils in my body? What are you talking about? That's nuts, right? Stem cell therapy was that was madness. That was quack science. That was nonsense. You know, the only people who embraced it initially were chiropractors. Oh my gosh. You know, so, and now stem cell therapy is like a mainstay of regular medical practice. And everybody knows what a stem cell is. So back to photobiomodulation, that corner is, you know, how we talk in economics about the hockey stick. We're right at that joint where things are going to start taking off. And so think about it this way. Most of your listeners probably know what red light therapy is. They've heard of red light therapy. Oh yeah, red light therapy. Oh yeah, it helps with inflammation and it makes your skin look, it prevents wrinkles. Yeah. All true. Okay. But what we're working with, not red light, but infrared light. So higher frequencies, more powerful, so that it can get through the scalp and skull and reach the brain. Or in the case of long COVID, if we're treating the chest wall and we're treating the lungs, then, you know, their inflammation goes away. You know, so it's right there on the verge, but there's a danger. And the danger, yes.
Ooh, okay. Right? Lay it on me. What? How is that the danger?
Oh, well, let me give you one other model. SPECT scans. You've heard of SPECT scans, right? You might know some guy who does a television program on public TV talking about SPECT scans, etc. SPECT scans are a great scan. I've just been asked in the last couple of weeks to give 2 talks on SPECT scans. I've published, you know, probably 17 papers on SPECT scans alone out of the 70 publications I have.
Jeez.
SPECT scans are a powerful way of looking at functional brain imaging, or how the brain is working. Okay. The problem is that people who did them started to say, oh, well, I can diagnose ADHD. I can't prove it to you. I can't give you the science because nobody's done the research, but I can diagnose ADHD. And the result is it got labeled quackery. And what's going on with infrared light is that people are using low-power devices that put out half a watt that doesn't get through the scalp and skull, and they're claiming they're treating the brain.
Oh, okay. I see exactly where you were going, because it was actually answering my question that I was going to ask. So are you saying that someone could walk around with essentially like a flashlight? If it's like you said, it had to be a powerful ray and everything, which I don't think a couple of D-cell batteries are going to cut the trick, right?
Yeah, so, you know, we're working, so, you know, we went into the laboratory and figured out what it would take to get through scalp and skull and 3 centimeters of brain. So about that thick, okay? I'm sorry, not high enough, that thick. And so we used sheep heads, and then we used cadaver heads, and then we used living human tissue. For example, my hand is 2.5 centimeters thick. And if I put an infrared light source here and a light meter here, I can tell exactly how much power, how much light comes through my hand, through skin and bone and muscle and sinew. And so using those kind of physical parameters of the penetration of light, or in fact, the lack of penetration of light through tissue, we showed, exactly how much energy we needed. And it's like 10 to 15 watts of infrared light applied to the scalp in order to be able to deliver the right amount of energy to cause that trick with the mitochondria to happen. Too little light doesn't happen. Too much light doesn't happen. You got to hit the window.
That's really interesting that it has a window for sure, because I guess it would make sense because, well, with all things you need balance, but really that would be kind of like if you're overloading it, it doesn't have time to process what you're trying to get it to go and do, I guess would be why that would be that way. And I already know the answer to this, but I just have to ask because you brought up the whole holding up your hand and shining that light through with a meter on the other end. You don't feel that, but like, do you? Like, in a sense, do you feel something like after effect, I guess?
You can feel a little bit of heat. And so one of the things that we had to work out was how do you work with those kind of power without causing a buildup of heat in the tissue. And I could explain why there's a buildup of heat. It's not from the light. It's not from the light that you deliver, but how it bounces around in the tissue that creates the heat. And so we figured that out. And our patients, they come in and they say it feels like a warm breeze. It doesn't feel hot or uncomfortable or painful in any way or shape or form.
That's really interesting. I almost want to say that you could not really have a tanning bed situation, right? Where it's just your whole body's being blasted with it. It has to be pretty specific, right?
Right. Because you've got to have enough power to get through into the deep tissue.
So if we can help our lungs and everything like that, what else on the body can be helped in that way? Because I know we're focusing on the brain, but I know that some other people and myself are just like, if it does that here and we got this, what else have y'all tried? Like, I'm sure not too much, right?
Well, no. You'd be surprised. So the original use of the lasers that we use, and these are lasers, coherent infrared light, the original use was to treat joints. There's also a really good use for infrared light, a different wavelength of infrared light to treat toenail fungus. You blast the toenail with a wavelength of infrared light that kills fungus but not human cells, and you wipe out the toenail fungus. The other thing that's going on that's even more fascinating, this is so cool. Down in Australia, they've been working on Parkinson's. And there's a connection between the gut, you can't see my belly, it's big enough, and the brain in Parkinson's. And so they've been treating with lower powers than what we work with, low power infrared light. They've been treating the belly. And two things happen. One, the Parkinson's gets better. And number two, a bunch of other things get better because they're treating the microbiome. We're actually literally treating the bugs that live in our gut. By that technique. So I have really cool. So I have some patients who have, in addition to the brain stuff, they had like inflammatory bowel disease, like IBS or Crohn's disease. And we said, okay, come on, let's try it out. 10, 12 treatments to their belly, and their symptoms are better. Wow.
Weird. So with that being said, 10 to 12 treatments and they start getting better, is it one of those situations where it's like you get a shot or a vaccine and you're good for X amount of years or so? Or is it just like, come in once a month or whenever you start feeling the symptoms again?
That is a fantastic question. Thanks for asking that one. So here's what we're seeing. With this multi-watt infrared light, this high-powered light, we started treating patients in 2013. We published our first series of traumatic brain injury patients in 2015. I'm still in contact with those patients. They're still doing well.
Whoa.
Our first depression study we published in 2017, so they were treated 2015, 2016, and 39 patients. 37 out of 39 are still doing well.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is this is a treatment that is powerful and it lasts.
Yeah. It's powerful, it's effective, it lasts, and that's the trifecta that we're looking for whenever we're trying to help ourselves, literally, because I know I don't want to sit there and have to rely on a bottle of pills to make my brain feel good. And a lot of people think that, like, depression, because you said you helped depressed mice, which who could have known a mouse could be depressed, but I would be too if I was a lab rat. So, like, that was the thing, is that how this is just really, really fascinating stuff. So, it's not a chemical imbalance whenever it comes to depression in that sense either, right?
Well, okay. Now, that's a very important question you just asked. That whole, let's just talk about depression for a moment. In my book, Brighter Days Ahead, really kind of focused on depression. And depression is not a chemical imbalance. It has nothing to do with serotonin. It has nothing to do with dopamine. The fact that Prozac increases serotonin and is an antidepressant, it's a happy accident. The two have nothing to do with each other. Literally nothing to do with each other. Depression actually is a degenerative disease. Dendrites, little trees of neurons. They're pulling back. They're losing branches. Synapses are dying. Circuits are breaking down. The frontal lobe gets thinner in depression. The hippocampus gets smaller in depression. And when you treat depression and a person becomes undepressed, the hippocampus gets bigger again and the frontal cortex gets thicker again. So that's regeneration. Now, the most powerful, you know what the most powerful chemical antidepressant is? Come on. It's in all the news. No.
Dopamine.
Ketamine.
Oh, ketamine.
Right?
Okay.
Ketamine.
Interesting.
So ketamine, a dissociative anesthetic, but it turns on brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. That's the driver of adult neuroplasticity, BDNF. And ketamine turns it on very powerfully. And I ran a ketamine clinic. I still run a ketamine clinic. I started the first ketamine clinic in Colorado. It was the 13th clinic in the country. And I started it because when I looked at ketamine and how it worked, I said, holy Toledo, this turns on BDNF. We got to be doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I use ketamine as a model in the book Brighter Days Ahead to talk about that depression is really a degenerative change. And the answer, the antidepressant that you want, is neuroplasticity, is brain rebuilding. Ketamine does it. Multi-watt infrared light does it. And you know what happens when you put the two together?
Really good things.
Really good things. Synergy. 1 + 1 = 3. Yeah.
Ooh. So it's kind of like where a horse and its partner or its friend or whatever, they generate more than double the horsepower if they're a good team, you know?
Correct.
So that's really fascinating.
You got it.
So, oh man, that just blows my mind whenever you're saying that depression is a degenerative disease and talking about the dendrites, because the mental imagery that I was getting in my head was that it's like, in having suffered depression and stuff myself and being out of it, it really does feel like a season of sorts in the head, where it's like the fall and winter came and everything just kind of went to sleep, and then whenever spring somehow comes around, everything starts blooming again, but it's not quick, it takes a minute. So that's just really fascinating that you're sitting there treating those, but you're not sitting there in a way that's going, take this to replace things. You're sitting there saying, take this or do this to help your body come back to life, essentially.
Yeah. And if your frontal cortex is thinner, do you think it's functioning normally?
No.
And that's why people, when they're depressed, they can't make decisions. They can't get themselves organized. They can't get themselves motivated. The frontal cortex is offline.
That's so strange. It's offline. And it takes a lot to really get that back on, too, I would imagine, from the actual scientific standpoint, right?
Well, apparently it takes about 4.3 doses of ketamine or 12 to 20 infrared light treatments.
Okay. So, but it would make sense to why someone could even get addicted to ketamine, I guess. If it makes your brain feel that good, it would sit there and probably make someone want more, which is great that you have a clinic for it, I guess, correct?
So, yeah, let's talk about that for just a moment.
Okay.
That's a very important distinction you're making, and one of the things that really bothers me about the ketamine field right now. So, the typical ketamine clinic says you must come in and get 6 infusions over 2 weeks. Okay? And that came from the first multiple infusion study, so one of which was done by Shiroma. Now, I reached out to Shiroma and said, okay, what's the molecular biology of why 6 infusions in 2 weeks? How did you come up with that number? And you know what his scientific response was? I'm not picking on you, Shiroma, but the scientific response was, I don't know, it sounded good. It's what we do for ECT.
Oh.
I am not kidding. Now, if ketamine turns on neuroplasticity and an axon grows a millimeter a day, how often should you get a ketamine treatment? Certainly not every 2 days.
Yeah.
Right? So for years, I mean, I've ran a clinic for over 12 years. For 9 of those years, I had clinic 1 day a week. So patients got an infusion 1 day, 1 time a week. And then I had started saying, okay, the clinic's full today. I'm gonna push out to next week. And what I saw, because I analyze all the data, I know exactly what's going on with all these patients. And I have this whole group of patients who got treatments every 2 weeks versus every 1 week. You know what the difference was between those two groups? Every 2 weeks versus every 1 week? The difference was absolutely nothing.
Really?
They all got 78% response rate, both groups, and they all got about, on average, across both groups, 4.3 infusions. So,
wow.
So over years, my patients are getting better with 4 or 5 treatments, not 6 infusions plus boosters, because you need the boosters because you rush all those treatments and the brain hasn't had a time to regenerate, and therefore you're still depressed, right? So the other myth that I need to address in ketamine is there's this urban myth that we talk about fracture, that the ketamine dose has to be high enough to induce hallucinations or it will not help your depression. Okay, I just told you I have a 78% response rate. The national average is 52%.
Wow.
And in my clinic over 11 years, exactly 1 patient ever hallucinated. It's poppycock.
Their body weight.
And so it's absolute nonsense. There's no reason to make people sick to their stomachs and hallucinate and ruin the rest of their day, if not the next day, to treat their depression. It's stupidity.
Yeah.
Sorry, I get passionate.
No, I love the passion here because that's one of the things that help drive humans to helping each other, right? And that's essentially what we're trying to do here. We're trying to let people know the amazing work that you're doing because this is revolutionizing. Here we go again. I can't say the word apparently. It is changing the whole medical field. It's not just you're making a new way for everything. It's that everything is changing. Everything is just changing so fast too, is that you have to really be kind of everywhere at once, right? And that's really hard to do whenever you're sitting there trying to just, help. But the passion is what makes Retrieving Sanity awesome. So what made you passionate about this whole thing, though?
Yeah. There we get to my deeper, darker secrets. So that's all right. So I grew up in a horrendous situation, and I've written about this in my book, so I'm not revealing anything new. And essentially, my mother gave me away, because she couldn't afford 4 children and work, and I was little. And then when I came back, there was this incredibly abusive, just horrific boyfriend in the house who was, a tyrant. I thought about suicide every day, from the age of 14 to about, to the age of about 19, and then often until about the age of 30. And literally after my 30th birthday party with my buddies, and I had to show up in the research lab the next morning, and I'm still drunk as a skunk. I'm talking to God on the white porcelain telephone, speaking of alcohol, and I said, well, heck, I always said I was never going to make it to 30. I was never going to live to 30 because I was going to die of suicide. And I said, I'm 30. I guess it's time to pony up and start taking life seriously. Not that I wasn't already doing serious stuff, but just, I had to throw that whole thought out the window. I had to just give it up.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that I did when I was a medical student and a graduate student, I got both an MD and a PhD, so I'm way overeducated. But that's a lot of years in school. So one of the things I did was I started a program that I trained medical students, and we went into the elementary schools and taught kids about good touch, bad touch. In other words, child sexual abuse prevention. And we were teaching the teachers, and we were teaching the parents, and we ran that program. I ran that program in St. Louis for 13 years.
Oh, wow.
And all through my residency, and all through medical school and my PhD work and residency. And that was my way of pushing back against what had been done to me. That was my way of returning to sanity and retrieving my sanity, was to do something. And the other thing that came out of this living with this tyrant, I was told I was, worthless. I would never amount to anything. When I was in medical school, it's, oh, you're a perpetual student. You'll never accomplish anything. Really? Okay. So I read a book early in college. It's called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas Kuhn. So do you know the term paradigm shift? Okay. Paradigm shift came from Thomas Kuhn, from that book. He talked about how science shifts. What it took for scientists to accept that the sun didn't rotate around the earth, but we rotated around the sun. Somebody had to be burned at the stake in order to get that to happen. And so I became sort of a tilter at windmills. I became passionate about challenging doctrines because I've been subjected to this man's doctrines for so many years. And, so my graduate school work and my PhD was literally challenging a doctrine in neurobiology. And, I'm in psychiatry, and there's all these doctrines, like, oh, serotonin is responsible for depression. It has nothing to do with it. There are so many studies that prove it. But so, I'm looking at things like traumatic brain injury. There's no treatment for that. I was doing functional brain scans, SPECT scans on people, and I'd call them in and say, well, your SPECT scan shows that you have a traumatic brain injury. There's nothing we can do about it. Have a nice day. That did not sit well with me.
Yeah.
So, I've been a maverick, and I've been a creator of change, and a pusher for change, and a SHIT disturber, and a pot stirrer, and it's my entire career. And I do it because I don't think, the way psychiatry treats people makes any sense whatsoever. Let's put you on a pill that makes you kind of sort of better and has all these side effects. No. No.
Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of that and opening up with us, because that is an amazing story. And first of all, I got to say, I'm sorry that everything happened the way that it did, but I'm glad that it did too, because we're here having this conversation about it and how you're going to help change the world, which is just crazy stuff. And I got to say to that boyfriend, whatever he is, like, he can go fuck himself. He can go screw himself, because now you're here. And it's just, I think that you could also thank him for giving fuel to the fire, I guess. But I also relate with the whole, I didn't think I would get here, because after I hit those birthdays, it was like, shit, I guess I gotta start planning a little bit now, right? Because it was always like, I couldn't see the future, but it was for one reason or another. And one of the things that I also kind of heard was that you are mirroring, or you probably know Dr. Fred Moss, the undoctor. You do? So I spoke to him, and he's the guy that helped me see that I didn't need the medication that I did, and because of that, I also found out that I was misdiagnosed as being bipolar. So it was like, cool. That was really interesting. And so if I could sit there and be like, hey, I'm going to go put on this awesome helmet full of lasers and get happier, I would totally do that in a heartbeat instead of taking some pills.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. In the sense of how, like, bipolar is thrown around like crazy, and all the functional brain scans I've looked at, more than 10,000 scans and 100,000 scans that we've done research on. There's actually, bipolar doesn't look like depression. Bipolar doesn't look like ADHD. They look completely different on a brain scan. But if you don't look at the brain, then you're never going to know. and psychiatry doesn't want to look at the brain.
Why?
That's a really, really good question. In fact, they put out a position paper, and the bottom line of the position paper was neuroimaging has no place in psychiatry.
What?
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
And every person I say that to has exactly that reaction. Yes. That's
okay.
But,
so Big Pharma has their hands in psychiatry. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, it's Big Pharma and it's egos. There's a famous line in science: scientific change happens one funeral at a time. Yep. In other words, the old guard has to die off before the paradigm can shift.
Yeah, that's true. That kind of follows suit with a lot of things in life, really. But that's a really good way to put that, because science sits there and it prevails, or it should outlast governments, it should outlast countries, stuff like that, so long as people actually use the knowledge correctly. But that's the thing too, is that you're an underdog of a sorts, right? You're sitting there, you're trying to tell everyone else, like, y'all are wrong, but like, how else can you tell people that they're wrong in a sense without being like just an ass about it,
Right. And it's very hard to be part of the system without getting either sucked in or pushed down. I left the university system. I went independent, have my own research foundation, my own treatment company, because the universities, they smother that. They push that down. They don't want that kind of independent and or radical paradigm shifting kind of thinking going on, which doesn't make sense.
I think it's because, like you said earlier, the ego gets in the way, because after a certain point, people become quote-unquote sellouts because they're looking for that financial security, stability, things like that. They want to be remembered, but they're forgetting that the whole point of that scientific and pursuit of knowledge is to pass the torch, because if you don't pass the torch, it just fizzles and fades out. But that's why this kind of stuff is so awesome, because whenever we get a peek behind the curtains, if you will, it's like, ooh, now the imagination starts twirling, and then that's where other things start to spring forth into the collective consciousness, and someone else with a bigger skill set can sit there and go, oh wait, maybe I can take that idea and do something with it, you know?
Yeah.
Real quick, you did say that you have a book, and you also have your own research stuff. So where can people find your book, and where can people find you if they ever need to find your services?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the company is Neuroluminance. Who can spell that? I don't know what I was thinking. So the way to get there is much easier. www.healmybrain.info. All one word. That'll get you to the website. There's tons of information about infrared light, about ketamine, about the ExoMind. We haven't talked about the ExoMind. ExoMind is the leap forward. We talk about leaps forward in science. The ExoMind is the leap forward in transcranial magnetic stimulation. So the magnet in the ExoMind is 3 times more powerful than most TMS magnets. And so the treatment, rather than being 40-hour-long treatments, so 5 days a week for 8 weeks, you're coming into a clinic and sitting there for an hour. The FDA-approved treatment with ExoMind is 6 treatments. 6 treatments lasting 23 minutes. So that's a huge revolution and a huge leap forward in TMS therapy. And here's a dirty little secret. TMS turns on neuroplasticity by activating BDNF by a third mechanism. There are light-gated calcium channels. Excuse me, not light. Voltage-gated calcium channels. Sorry. Voltage-gated calcium channels. And TMS induces an electrical current in the brain. But with this bigger magnet, you get a bigger current, and therefore you're able to turn on those voltage-gated channels, activate BDNF by a third mechanism. And remember, ketamine plus infrared light, you put them together, you get synergy. What happens if you put 3 things together? You get even more synergy. Or if someone doesn't want to do needles, or they don't want to do ketamine, or they had a bad experience at some other clinic, we can do infrared light plus the ExoMind and get that same synergy in terms of recovery from whatever. Again, because it doesn't matter what the condition is. If we make the neurons healthier, if we make the mitochondria healthier, we make the condition healthier. We're treating Alzheimer's and ADHD, autism, Parkinson's, traumatic brain injury, depression, PTSD. Yeah.
That is way too cool.
And long COVID. Long COVID is, what is long COVID? Oh, they're talking about you've got leftover COVID spike protein in your brain. Nonsense. COVID is inflammation in the brain. It's also the reactivation of latent viruses in the brain. We know what those viruses are. You combine infrared light to treat the inflammation with antiviral medication. Long COVID goes away. Yeah, we have patients completely healed.
That is way too cool. And so you're also not saying that the brain tissue necessarily regenerates all the way through, but at least the lower, the smaller levels kind of get there, right?
Well, so let's look at traumatic brain injury, which is where we started.
Okay.
So in some people with traumatic brain injury, the injury is bad enough that brain cells died, right? There's scar tissue in the brain. Now, I'm not bringing those back to life. I'm Dr. Henderson, not Dr. Frankenstein, right? So what we're doing, though, is all the cells around that injury that are limping along, we energize them. We help them to heal. We turn on neuroplasticity so they're able to heal and make new connections. When I give a lecture on this, I show a veteran who had his injury 30 years before we treated him. And his brain scan looked horrid. And after treatment, the part of his brain that was dead was still there. It was still dead. But all the rest of his brain looked so much better. And
Huh.
clinically, he was doing so much better.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's really freaking cool. I guess it would kind of, it kind of plays on that whole thing that the brain is just way too intricate. Like, we have no idea what's going on in there, because some people just have one hemisphere and they are just fine. And we're kind of like, but we thought this side did this stuff. So have y'all done this kind of work on anyone that only has one hemisphere of their brain?
You know, I have peripherally, I have a patient. I do very little with her. I mostly take care of her mom, who had to have a hemispherectomy due to intractable seizures. And, you know, I've watched with joy kind of how the rewiring has gone, and she's able to walk, and both legs respond to one half of her brain. And she's able to use both hands, not perfectly with the affected one, but, you know, she's able to use them. And she's starting to be able to communicate more effectively, you know, with a communication device. And she was talking about like real important emotions that you know, we didn't fully appreciate that she can conceptualize. And she was talking about concepts that it's like, wow, I didn't know that was going on in there. That's amazing. And so she's just, you know, just this week, she just lit up my life with this beautiful kind of conversation that happened between her and her mom. And so, yeah, I would love to you know, encourage that neuroplasticity. I would do it very, very gently. But, you know, we're not at that point. She's mom's not ready, and that's fine.
Yeah. Huh. That's really, really cool. And I would love to see all about that kind of stuff. I'm just excited to hear all about this because I'm a little geek science nerd myself. So it's one of those things that everything about the human body is crazy because it's it's such a paradox, if you know, because it's like it's so resilient, but it's so fragile at the same time. And the way that it just decides to keep on chugging whenever I've tried to throw it off a cliff a couple times, I'm just like, I don't know how it did it, but I'm here. So it's going to be really cool to see what y'all can do with people that didn't do that to themselves. You know, they didn't have a choice, and you're going to be able to sit there and help them regain basically their whole life, it sounds like.
Well, that's my goal, is to help as many people as I can.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to make sure that we do that too, because we're going to spread this as far as we can. But I have to ask, because this is such an awesome, it's just an awesome interview. It's a story of sorts, really. It is a documentary almost, right? Because this is going to be something that everyone can look back on and be like, oh, wow, this is the beginning stages of this treatment. So it's going to be really cool. But I have to ask, do you think that we could see you on in the future to talk a little bit more about neuroscience and stuff like that?
Sure, absolutely. I'd be glad to.
Sweet. Because I know an hour is nowhere near enough for all this, and I have just a few questions for you, game segment wise, if you want to try them out real quick.
Sure, I'm game.
Alrighty. So everyone, we're going to play something called Fact or Fracture today, and I'm going to throw Dr. Theodore Henderson some statements that he has to tell us if they're fact or fracture. So, are you ready?
As long as they're medical, we're okay.
Okay. All right. So, ketamine works because it makes you hallucinate. You already answered this.
Yes. That is totally a fracture. That's an urban myth.
Got it. Sweet. And then infrared light therapy is just woo-woo pseudoscience.
It could be. It could be if the people who make these low light devices that put out half a watt, you know, you made the reference to putting a helmet over your head. That's going to be a half a watt device, because if you put a 10 watt laser in a helmet and somebody shined that in their eye, they would fry their retina. So it could be pseudoscience. My goal is to make sure that it's pure, beautiful, clean medical science that's backed up by research and facts. And so it could be a fracture if we're not careful.
Ooh. Oh, I love that. So just be careful where you buy your lasers from, I guess. So up next, once you have PTSD, your brain can never heal.
That has been a long-term kind of conclusion, and why the VA does such a crappy job of trying to treat it with pills and group therapy. But no, PTSD can definitely heal.
Love it. That would be fracture, I guess.
Yes,
right?
That's a
Okay,
fracture.
Good. All right. So then up next, long COVID brain fog is psychological, not biological.
That's definitely a fracture.
Got it.
Now, I've already answered that question, but long COVID brain fog is inflammation, or it's the reactivation of certain latent infections. If you ever got Lyme disease and it's latent in your body, and you have a COVID storm, the cytokine storm in COVID, that turns on these, that shuts down the ability of the immune system to stop these infections, and they just take off running. The other one that's very common in long COVID is reactivated Epstein-Barr virus, which is one of the things that I'll treat in my long COVID patients.
Huh. That's really interesting. Well, thank you for that. And also reiterating that, rather. Next, all antidepressants fix a chemical imbalance in the brain. Man, you just answered all these questions before I even got to them.
There you go.
Oh, here's one that I don't know if we've really touched on or not. But, viruses can trigger depression and chronic fatigue.
Yes, that is absolutely true.
All right.
You read chapter 17.
Pads and helmets that claim to deliver infrared light are just as effective as clinical laser treatments.
Totally a fracture.
Wow. Let's see. Well, if ketamine doesn't work for someone, it means they can't get better. Obviously a fracture. So you've also answered that one previously. Okay, so neuroimaging like SPECT scans can actually help guide mental health treatment.
Absolutely, that is a fact. Most of psychiatry claims it's a fracture.
Well, I think that they're kind of not right in that regard. Well, with that being said, you have just finished our first round of Fact or Fracture, and you have earned the honorary title of the Brain Rebuilder because, well, you're quite literally helping people rebuild their brains.
Great, I'll wear the mantle with pride.
Well, thank you very much. But I have one last question, if you do not mind. So, Dr. Theodore Henderson, the name of this podcast is Retrieving Sanity, and we explore how all facets of living life impact mental health. Looking at the incredible motley adventures of your life, what does retrieving sanity personally mean to you today, and what's one practice or perspective you believe is crucial for anyone on that journey?
Wow. Oh, just one, right?
Yeah, just try to narrow it down.
All right.
If you need to do two, two's okay too.
Well, I'll say two things. So, all through residency and fellowship, I was on antidepressant medications, and particularly during my fellowship here at the University of Colorado. Oop, I said it out loud. It was demoralizing. It was capricious authoritarianism. And there's nothing I hate more than capricious authoritarianism. It just made me just sick. When I left the university and when I started my own private practice, within a month, I didn't need the antidepressants anymore. Now, what do I do to maintain and continue to retrieve my sanity? I think the most important thing is meditation. And we didn't talk about that today. And it's talk about woo-woo. But meditation is a very powerful way of rebuilding and restoring your brain. It reduces cortisol. It encourages neuroplasticity. And it helps you to realize that you can let go of things. Because meditation literally is a process of learning how to let go.
Oh, thank you for that. That is some really deep insight. And I think that that's the first time someone's mentioned meditation for that. And I really love that because I personally love meditation. And I think that that would be a great topic to kind of bounce off of for our next conversation. So, how does meditation, like, I would love to see some brain scans of before and after and stuff like that. Not saying you have to bring anything on, but just like so I could picture it in my head while you talk about it, you know.
There you go.
With that being said, everyone out there, thank you for listening to Retrieving Sanity on WDJY 99.1 FM. And don't forget to go to Dr. Theodore Henderson's website, and that was healyourbrain.info.
Healmybrain.info.
Healmybrain.info. So it's your brain is in my brain, but not my brain because it's my brain. But with that being said, everyone, y'all have a good night or whenever it is that you're listening to this. And remember, try to love yourself if you can, love others if you can, but you gotta love yourself first. And we will catch y'all next week. And with that being said, much love. Shlan!